first level and second level model, I just want to take some time to recap on some of the settings for pre-processing, because some of you have told me that perhaps the pace is a little bit quick. So just as a quick revision, because we don't need to spend lots of time. Anyway, I have already saved this script or saved this pipeline into. We have a Dropbox folder containing all the information. So anyway, you could have this file for your reference. And depending on the time, I might also make some slices so that just some simple screen cap, so that you know what kind of information you need to put in for pre-processing. So anyway, on Monday we try to build a batch that we link all the files to one processing routine. So first of all, we've done slice timing, if you remember, which I think is optional for you if you have some data, because depending on the research question, but I normally don't do that. I don't want an extra step of interpolation. So normally I don't do slice timing, but as a demonstration I put it here. So you need to remember that maybe you don't need to do it. And then so slice timing, there are different things you need to set. And remember for our sample data set. So for those of you who haven't joined the first session, you need to know that we have a folder of sample data set, which is called in German Beispielstudie. So that's something like example data set. Yeah, so if you open the zip file called spm_Raphael, then you will see these two different folders. The Beispielstudie, so the example study called VG. And in this folder you'll see there's some batch file, and there's curriculum. You could try to read if you know German. And then there are two individual subjects folder. So VP1, VP2 is two example subject, and then within each subject you see all the analyze, cause, analyze, blah blah blah. These are the rubbish we haven't thrown away. So because we've used the same data set for demonstration for many times, so each time we create a new folder within the individual subject. So I'm just too lazy to do the cleanup anyway. So the really important files here would be, or the folder would be, first of all, the high-res. High-res contains the T1 anatomical image. And if you remember, on the first day after we've done the pre-processing, we've already segmented the T1 into different tissue classes. And so the main or the raw data is called here F and L something. And then after your segmentation, the procedure, then we also have all this normalized. No, it's this one because we haven't done any normalization on the T1. So here, from C1 to C5 is the results of the segmentation. And then you see there's S1, S2, S3. Those are the three folders containing the fMRI data for 3 functional runs. Okay? And within each folder, now you should find, because after running the pre-processing, you should find files beginning with F and L, which is the raw data, already converted from DICOM, and which is now in a format what we call Nifty. So it's .NII. It's a Nifty format. And after each time you write out a new set of images, so for a certain preprocessing step, then you will add a prefix to the sets of files so that you know what exactly you have done in your data, on your data. So here the files beginning with A, once again, is slice time character images. And then we use this as a basis for motion correction, for head motion correction. And so after that, because we are not writing out new sets of images, we are only changing what we call the header information from these files. So you won't see any new files until the point that we write out the normalized images. And the normalized images would add a prefix of W, which means warp. So you warp your image to the standard template. And then the latest or the last step of reprocessing is smoothing. So you add an S. So now for the kind of data analysis we are going to do today, we are going to use SWA, FNL. So this series of files. Yeah. So I just go back to the pipeline so that just to refresh your memory, or I mean if you're not here on Monday, we will just quickly go through what exactly you need to set. For slice timing, just quickly go through, I mean we have 3 sessions, remember? So we click like 3 times so that there are 3 separate sessions. These are the parameters that you need to obtain from the sequence or from your from the technician who is setting up the sequences. So first of all, number of slices, so how many number of slices you scan in order to acquire a whole brain image. And in our case, we are doing 32 slices. So in case you want to revise once a bit, and you put in 32. And TR, again, is like you need to get this value from your MRI technician. In our case, we are using a TR of 2.6. You also kind of need to remember this because when we set our first level model, we also need this information. And with these two, with the number of slices with TR, you could calculate the TA, which means the time acquisition. So the time required for you to acquire 1 slice or 1 brain volume. Not 1 slice, but 1 brain volume. And here already it is stated at the bottom, there's like an equation for you to calculate this TA value. So it's normally, or it's usually calculated as TR minus TR divided by the number of slices. So you could just put in, so TR minus TR divided by the number of slices, because this is MATLAB environment. So you could put in any kind of equations in this space, as long as you could get an answer. So then you see that automatically TA equals to 2.5 something. And slice order, again you need to obtain this from the MRI technician. In our case, in our sample data set, we are having a descending order of scanning. So we could simply use the suggested equation here. So this is a MATLAB expression. First begin with the last slice, 32, then colon minus 1 means that each time you jump by minus 1 step and until 1. So if you put in this value, then you will see that now you have 32 numbers from 32, 31, so and so on back to 1. Yep, so this is something you need to fill in. And the reference slice. Usually you take the middle slice as the reference. Okay? So we are taking slice number 16. Alright?
So this slice order actually means that 32 is the last slide.
Yep. And okay, so this is slice timing. and then in realign when we want to do head motion correction. So remember when we set this up, we want to use the output from the previous step as the input of the current step. So when you want to do it, then you want to click the button on dependency. So when you click dependency, you will see, there are any kind of inputs from the previous steps that it will appear here. So you could choose without even putting in the real data. So here I would like to use the slice time corrected images from session 1 to put here as the images of like session 1 for realign, and so on for session 2 and session 3. The other option you need to change would be the reslice options. As I said, we want to avoid interpolation as many times as possible. So here we are not really writing out a new set of images, but we are only creating what we call the mean image to represent the the average and anatomical details with the modality of both EPI. And after motion correction, remember we are putting or using one brain volume as the reference, and then we move around the subsequent brain volumes to match with or align exactly with the reference scans. So all these transformations on the XYZ plane and the rotations along the XYZ axis will be stored in the header file as what we call a directional cosine, that you need to transform this image. But the raw image, we didn't touch on it at this point. So what you need to do is only choose reslice images using, from the default option of all images plus mean image to mean image only. Okay? So that's the only thing you need to change, or the only option you need to change. And then, so after movement correction, we obtain the mean image, then we want to bring the high resolution structural image together to the same space as the functional image. Now remember, after realignment, we have created the mean image, which is quite a nice representation of the anatomical details for the both fMRI data. So we are using that as a reference, which means that during the process it stays or it remains stationary. And this mean image, then we are going to put in the source image, the high resolution T1 images as the source, which means that you are going to move around that particular T1 image, T1 structural image, to match with the mean EPI, the functional image, so that you are bringing them to the same space. The good thing or the advantage about this choice of using the mean image as the reference is that you don't need to really worry about the rest of the functional images. After movement correction, they remained stationary. You are only moving the T1 to match with them. And so you use or you choose reference image, and then you click on dependency so that you could get the mean image in this case. After it could be the T1 also, but then if you choose the T1 as the reference and then the source you use the mean image, then you need to also write all this transformation onto the EPI files, because now this time you are moving around, or you are keeping the T1 structural image stationary. You are trying to move around the mean image to match with the orientation and direction of the structural T1 image. So then, you are only moving the mean image. You are doing nothing to the functional ones. But the goal of this step to co-register is to bring the functional images to the orientation and location of the T1 high resolution structure image, so that later on when you do segmentation on the T1 or the structure image, then you can apply this transformation or normalization parameters also to the EPI, since they are in the same space after registration. Okay?
Can you show us the directory again of the two images? Just don't show here, just so when you click the reference image and then you will have the
okay.
reference image box.
So here, co-registration.
Yes.
The reference image is the mean image, and the source image would be the T1, the structural image, the high resolution structural image in this case. Okay? So I'm leaving it blank, but you could already, if you want, you could fill it up so that you know it's the high resolution T1.
Would you please actually use a specify function and detail so that we can follow?
Okay, yeah, if you want, yes. So we simply double click on it and then we go to the place where the, let me see, I think it's in web lab. So I just go up one level and then SPM data, yes. And here when you go to BP1 and you click high res, and I'll put in the raw file, fn, here, okay? And so now after this, in theory, you would have two sets of images. You would have the series of both EPI image already motion corrected, plus the mean image of the EPI of all the both image, which is kind of like a representation of the structure. So you're eliminating or you're minimizing the paradigm-induced fluctuation in terms of the signals in this case. Anyway, so you also have the T1, the structural image, and these two sets of images are supposedly in the same space, having the same orientation, so they are in the exact same location in the view of the computer. So what we are going to do next is to use the high resolution T1 image for segmentation. So by doing so, you could obtain the normalization parameters for you to use on the structural, on the functional image. Okay. So you just need to put, so here volumes. I'm also setting up a dependency because here in co-register I use or I move around the T1 image so that the output of the co-registration step would be a T1. So this time now I use the T1 as the input. And there are two different things you need to do. First of all, you need to choose here for A-file regularization which template you are going to use. So either you could use European brains or East Asian brains. So definitely we need to do East Asian brains in this case if you have data collected locally. And then for deformation field, which is the parameters for you to normalize the images, and you will need the forward deformation. So if you are not so sure whether you should use inverse or forward, you just take a look at the instruction or the tips behind here. So you could always find some useful information. And so now after this step, the T1 should be segmented, and then you could simply use or apply this deformation field, which is the normalization parameters, to the images of the both fMRI signal. Okay, so here both of them are dependencies because we do have an output after realignment, because we have like corrected from head motion, then now I want to simply put them into a algorithm for the normalization. And then the deformation field, as I said, you could bring it from the last step. One more thing. If you are going to do VBM analysis, you might want to ask, okay, you mentioned something like, I would like to, or you would need to use the normalized modulated image as the input for a muscle-based morphology. So how you could obtain this kind of images is here. So you see a tissue type and then tissue probability map using like the first image of the TPM. So this is talking about the gray matter image or gray matter probability image. If I want to write out a new image which is modulated and then normalized to the template, you could click here for the walk tissue and then you could simply choose modulated. Okay? And the same for the second tissue class, which is white matter in this case. Again, you would like to have the modulated white matter probability map after the kind of, after segmentation. And I also choose to have the modulated normalized CSF. Okay, so this is not definitely or absolutely necessary, but I think it would be just nice for you to see this also. So after segmentation, remember we are having some parameters for us to normalize the individual image to the template. So now the fifth step here, which is normalize, right, exactly do that. So first of all, you need the deformation field again. So this is from the segment. So that's why we, or you could click on dependency and then choose this file as the input for the normalization parameters. And then for images to write now, if you check on the dependencies, so we are going to write out the motion corrected or movement corrected images to the standard MNI space. So here you choose section 1, 2, and 3 as the input. Okay? There is not so much you need to set here. For example, bounding box or voxel sizes. There is a possibility that at some point you might want to change your voxel size, but in general circumstances, you don't need to change anything here. And the last step would be smoothing. So you are using dependency, getting the output from the last step, and then you just need to decide which files as an input, because now you are, or you have written out the normalized EPI images, the normalized functional images. So you simply choose under dependency on the normalized. So you are smooth, or you are smoothing all these functional images or normalized functional images here. And you could change the amount of Gaussian smoothing by changing this. So normally in normal situations, the 8mm Gaussian kernel would work pretty well. Sometimes if you are really interested in the small nuclei, then you could change it to 6mm or even 4mm. It depends. So that's a pipeline. That's a preprocessing pipeline that we've tried once. So today we don't necessarily need to run it, otherwise it will take so much time. So any questions before we go on?
I have a question. I forget the step for the normalized right at that step. I'm wondering what should I put for images to write?
For images to write.
Normalized right that step.
Here.
Yes.
So now you are trying to normalize the EPI images
Yes.
to the standard space. So before you do normalization, which is the last step you touch on the functional image. Do you remember? Which is the realigned images, right? So first of all, you do slide style correction on the EPI, on the functional image, then you correct for head movement. So after that point, you haven't really touched the functional image, right? They are stationary. Now you want to bring them to the standard space. So that's why the images to write should be, in this case, after realignment. So the output of the realigned functional images should be the input for this normalization step. Okay? So by building up this kind of pipeline, after you fill in the necessary information, for example, in slide time correction, then you need to fill in session 1, 2, and 3. Then the whole chain of processing, of preprocessing will be started. And then automatically the output of one step will be fit into as the input of the next step. Okay? And yes, by doing so then you could save some time. You don't need to click for each subject, for each step every time and fill it in. There are other tricks. You could use even the batch interface to automatically run the whole sample at the same time. But we will see if we have time to cover that. So, because I also don't want to overwhelm you with too much information. Okay. So then, we are going to, if you don't have any further questions on preprocessing, then we are going to start something new again.
Pre-processing and we were wrong, right?
No, because you still have some missing. So you haven't clicked on the section yet? Yeah, but here you have. So in data, you need to click new section. Yes.
It's the same 270 files.
Yeah. So after you click this, when you get like 3 different sections, you could use dependency to get the input from the last step. Okay? So now
you really want everything before we move forward?
not this time. You don't need to run. This is just as a revision.
Okay. So I just follow you to the whole thing.
Yeah, supposedly you have already run this. Or even if you are not here on Monday, I think the folder also got the necessary files for you to use as an input for the first level and the second level analysis.
That might be.
Right. So here we are moving from the temporal processing domain to spatial preprocessing domain, to statistic nouns. So you will also see that, okay, there are DCM and MEG, EG, some utilities or some tools. Tools is the place where you have installed some toolbox as the extension of SPM functionality. So if you, there are some default toolboxes. For example, the data toolbox, we talked about it today, and then the field map toolbox, and like the old segment, old normalized. These are the old things. Estimate, GFCE, so and so on. But you could always add some new toolboxes, because if you go to SPM web page, you will always see that, or you will find out that there are so many extension tools that works together with SPM, some of them are standalone packages that helps you to do something. So always, you could, if you're interested, you could always play around with these toolboxes and then try to see if they will aid your analysis. But anyway, the main functionality you are going to use anyway would be mainly on the statistics. So we are going to cover some of them, but not all, because mainly for first level analysis, what you are going to need is to do fMRI model specification. This is the first level model. For the second level model, then you would do factorial design specification. And there are some functions that might be useful for you. For example, if you want to check what kind of models you have set up, you could always do model review. And if you want to do the calculation, you could do model estimation. Contrast manager helps you to build up your contrast, but we might see that later. And then there are some advanced kind of analysis, mixed effect analysis, Bayesian model selection, which is less commonly used. And also you could have PPI, but for PPI, I would recommend you to go to see the SPM menu, because there are some kind of step-by-step instruction you could follow to do PPI. So if you are really interested, then you could try yourselves. But the most important thing would be this one, fMRI model specification, as well as the factorial design specification. Okay. So I just click on the fMRI model specification in this case. So these are all what you need to specify a first level model for one individual subject. So now remember, you assume that you have 15 subjects, which means that you need to do this 15 times. Okay? The other thing you need to know before you start your analysis is that the onset of your events. Because you have an experimental paradigm, and you will need those information for you to tell, or for you to build the design matrix, which is like the combined regressors or expected signals of your condition of interest plus the condition of no interest. So here, first of all, you need to specify a directory. Okay, so this is just simply something, for you to keep apart every single participant, because once you set up a model and then you run a model, you will obtain some files. So it's always a good practice that for each individual subject, you set up a folder to store the raw data, including the functional data and the anatomical data. And for functional data, if you have more than one runs, for example, you have 4 different runs of images, you should put them in separate folders. This is kind of like data management. So along the same line, you also should have different folders for the first level model. Because first of all, for each subject you need a space to store the results of the general linear model you are going to run. Plus, you might not only examine one single model. You might want to play around with the modeling, the lumping of different regressors, and then for each different model setup you want to test, you could have, you could put the results into separate different folders, so that you won't mix up results or mix up the data when you are doing second network analysis. So you need to have a really neat and tidy file structure to aid you, so that you won't do things, with a mistake. So you simply choose a directory. So here let's say, I go to, for example, SPM, the sample dataset, and then you see the S1, S2, S3, which are the raw data for 3 runs and the high resolution. And now this time I try to add, or I try to create a folder, a new folder called, let's say SYU, or HKSYU. So this is the sample example model for the workshop here. So now, let me see if I already get it. No, not yet. So I just refresh it, go back, and then I see this HKSYU. So you could, when you decided to choose, you could just simply click here, and you see I selected one directory. If you accidentally, for example, here on the left hand side, you just click into HKSYU, you haven't selected it yet. So what you need to do is to here, to click the one dot. One dot is like the command or Linux command for the current directory. So you simply click the dot, and then you will see, you could always double check by looking at the bottom to see if you have like something like a selected file. Okay? And you click done, and here you already see that the directory you selected something. Okay? And then it's time for you to put in some parameters. So first of all, you will need to specify the unit of your design. So whether you want to count your time in terms of the number of scans, or in terms of the number of seconds that passed, it doesn't really matter a lot. In fact, it doesn't matter at all, because no matter how you set in terms of the number of scans or in terms of seconds as a unit, the final design matrix will be the same. It's a matter of, I don't know, I couldn't recall why there exist 2 different ways of settings. But anyway, just choose one that you find you're comfortable to work with. Let's say we use seconds because this is like the SI unit. So when you are defining the onset of your paradigm, then you think in terms of at which second you have a certain event, the onset of a certain event, instead of a scan number something. Because if you choose scan, which means that you are using like 1 brain volume as a unit of time. So you could always convert the unit of seconds to scans by dividing the time, or the time repetition, the TR, with the exact onset time of your stimulus. And you could always, you could have like decimal numbers. You don't necessarily need to put in integers for the event onset. So I could have my first trial starting at 1.69 scans. Okay? So it doesn't really matter if you choose scans as the unit. So for seconds, I would say for beginners, it's easier, it's less, you have less chance to make mistakes. Okay. But still, you still need to define the interscan interval. So interscan interval is the time repetition. There's again some historical reason why they don't use TR, but it's equivalent to TR. Okay? So in this case, if you remember the preprocessing step, during the slice time correction, we put in this value once. So here again, I mean, I'm telling you this, but you need to find out if you have your own data from your MR technician. That, I mean, this time we are using a TR of 2.6 seconds. Okay. And then you have micro time resolution and micro time onset. That's something you don't need to care about. In general, I mean, generally, if you don't change it, it's okay. Things will work fine. So you don't need to worry too much about it. But if you want to know what it is, remember when you put in or specify your boxcar function or your event-related function, you are going to build a regressor based on the convolution of your event sequence with the canonical hemodynamic function. Remember that? So we have a particular shape of the bolt response, and then you have a chain of events, and then you build a time course or expected time course. So I mean, let me just try to use more multimedia in this case. Video, I think. Or search. Yeah. Okay. So remember that we have a certain. So this is the time domain. All right. You have your onset of events. Let's say we are doing some kind of event-related design. So these are the onsets of the particular trial. Okay, so remember we have some kind of jittering, so it's design efficient anyway. So then what you are going to do to build the regressor would be you are multiplying this by a canonical hemodynamic response function, which looks like this, right? So what you are going to get is something like this. Roughly. So if you take a look at the onset of events at the top times or multiplied by the canonical hemodynamic function, then you are expecting to get a time course like this, the expected time course. Here, it is in much higher temporal resolution than the one you have for your time course. So SPM first will scale up the time resolution, I mean the resolution in the time domain, by a factor of this micro time resolution, which means that for each TR, you are going to divide the TR into, let's say, 16 time bits. So all the subtle changes in this expected time course will follow this time resolution. And the micro time onset is like if you've done slice time correction, you are going to to adjust your time course of all the slices to the middle, right? So here is like one setting that tells if you have done slice time correction, every single slice is starting at the same time point, or is adjusted to the same time point, which is the middle of the time. So I mean, you could do something with this, but normally people don't really worry about that. So anyway, I mean, this is just for you to understand what is happening. So in SPM, you scale up the time resolution to build the regressor, and then you scale down the time resolution again. So you are only, or the SPM will only take like this point, this point, this point, this point, this point, this point, with respect to the brain volumes. So let's say, I mean, this is the time for 1 TR, because you only have one data point per TR. So that's why scale up for the convolution and then scale down or downscale to match with the resolution of your time series to make the regressors. Okay? And then, okay. So go back to